social media, Amazon, Tesco delivery. I don't know, you name something, we just couldn't live without it because it's all anyone uses.
In the last few hundred years, a few individuals have conceptualized ideas bearing similarity to what we know today as the internet. While early attempts were groundbreaking at the time, the technology we needed to develop these concepts into what we know today wouldn't start to gain traction until the mid-20th century. With some local networks existing from the 1960s onwards, it wasn't until 1991 that Tim Berners-Lee published the code for the World Wide Web. The internet as we know it was born. For the first time, people could go onto a computer and access hundreds of interactive resources all from one computer. As the early internet developed, online content was becoming more and more interactive. The ways in which we use the internet began to develop and expand. This expansion would lead to a new era of online use that would become known as Web 2.0. The user-driven content of Web 2.0 led to even more rapid expansion of internet usage, with growth from 1.1 billion users in 2005 to 4.1 billion users in 2019. With over half the world's population having access to the internet, it's interesting to see how we perceive it as a society.
It connects people together. It connects everything together. It connects people with jobs. It connects people with job opportunity.
I've got friends from Palestine because of the internet, and obviously that's something that we just would never have without it.
I think it's good to connect to people, but I do think it makes you feel quite lonely because you're constantly comparing your life to other people's, and I think it can be quite bad for mental health.
You've got influencers and models and flat tummy co and all that stuff, people selling you weight loss things that don't actually work and just make you ill, and it's a whole body image problem that's definitely prevalent in young people.
Ultimately, especially in this day and age with fake news and stuff, it's causing a lot of harm. But I also don't see how we could roll it back now. It's sort of become ingrained in how we live. And while it's doing a lot of good, it's also hard to get away from the bad.
I think it takes up a lot of people's time, but I think it's up to the individual to determine how long they're actually on the internet.
Part of the reason for our increase in time online is due to its availability on portable devices like smartphones and tablets. After the web went live in 1991, it wasn't long before businesses saw the potential phones had to do more than just call, with 1993's Apple Newton and 1994's IBM Simon showing the first real attempts to launch into the smartphone era. But it wasn't until the release of the Nokia 9000 in 1996 that the internet was accessible via mobile phone. Despite the smartphone era developing in the late 90s, the release of the first iPhone in 2007 saw popularity skyrocket.
And we are calling it iPhone.
Ushering in a new era where internet usage and other online functions could be accessed at any time with ease.
Obviously the whole point of smartphones is that you've got the internet on them, but I don't think necessarily that's a bad thing, because I do think it's a good idea that you've got that so accessibly in your pocket or just in your bag, and you can just pull up anything in the world. They do have a lot of effect though, because obviously social media is so readily available on phone.
Obviously before smartphones, obviously growing up, I didn't have a smartphone and I had to go on the computer, get all that big thing, dial up and stuff like that. Definitely think just having it in the palm of your hand has definitely impacted how much people use it, to use it more so.
It's no surprise that mobile phones have increased internet and social media usage. With mobile phone ownership higher than it's ever been before, it's also no surprise that those most vulnerable to overusage are young people, with 16 to 24s having the highest rate of mobile ownership every year from 2012 to 2017. But it isn't just mobile phone ownership where 16 to 24s lead the way. In the UK, 100% of 16 to 24-year-olds use the internet daily or almost daily. With the highest usage and consumption rate of any other age group, it's no surprise that reports of mental health issues amongst young people are increasing, with 6.3 million US teens having an anxiety disorder at some point during their teens. Will the continuing increase in media usage impact younger generations?
Children being exposed to social media, it has positives and it has negatives. The negatives are very much wanting to fit into a mold which isn't yourself, almost just to be this person who will get big and like known on like Instagram and stuff like that. But there's also like positives of it, which is like you will again meet people who you may not have met before, and you'll be able to see people experiencing things which you may not have experienced before, and it helps you learn more.
I feel like every year it gets younger and younger, the sort of the age where it's appropriate to be on social media. You've got kids now who are sort of 8 or 9 who are being introduced to it through like YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and it's shaping how they see themselves, which at that age can be really damaging, because that's where you start to become yourself. And if you're being influenced by all these outside factors, I feel like you really change who you're meant to be.
Everyone's hungry for likes and approval, and it's fake, and it definitely doesn't have a positive impact on how people see themselves, because even the people who get 1,000 likes are still going to be there at the time they get 600, like, oh, I look ugly. Like, it's not positive in any sense.
There's a danger because obviously they open themselves up to all sorts of things that go on there. Older people, perverts, yes, so I think this really shouldn't be allowed on until 16 plus.
As for younger people seeing that and being like grown up in that kind of environment, I definitely think that's very unhealthy, especially for people struggling with like their self-image, seeing models like get all these massive likes, like, oh, I want to have all those likes, and we try and get like that. And obviously sometimes they live unhealthy lifestyles behind that.
On the other end of the scale, it's reported that in the UK, 24% of over 65s haven't used the internet at some point in the last 3 months, the lowest of all age groups. With information and services shifting onto the internet more than ever before, is there a risk of some over 65s feeling increasingly isolated?
Some you can say, because they may not be up to date with technology, up to date with like all the newest computers and all that. But the thing is, like, there is a majority of older people who are sort of like caught up with it. Like my gran and granddad have like the Google Echo little thing, and they use that. They have like more fancy technology than my mum and dad do.
Technology has not suddenly appeared, like we didn't suddenly just get an iPhone 10.
It sort of gives a negative impression of older people as well, because people might think that they're quite like out of touch. So
they had enough time to adapt, they just didn't. It's their own fault. I don't care.
It is a shame when older people don't necessarily know how to use the internet. And I understand why some people might not like it because they don't like the change, but also I think what's important is that there should be lessons given to elderly people if they wanted to access the internet, because a lot of the time like they don't need it, but some people might like it. So like if your nan wants to text you but she doesn't know how, I think it's interesting and really important showing them new things that they didn't used to have in their world before.
I don't feel like we could go back on what we've accomplished in the last 10 years or so. I feel like Facebook's losing subscribers, but I don't think it's ever going to disappear, at least not in our generation.
If people keep being like toxic online, as some people are right now, it could turn into a very bad thing for society, and everyone could become like internet zombies, just looking at their phone all the time.